There's no need to fear. Underdog is here. This was one of my favorite cartoons as a kid, and I wanted to do an archetype reading, and I had intended on only grabbing one of these cards, but three plopped out. And, just kind of noodling on what these three aspects might comprise in someone. And we've got Child Eternal, Beggar, and Rebel. And to me, that says the underdog. Someone who has that enough optimism, if not naivete, to take some sort of David and Goliath swing at some oppressive system or circumstance or something that is put in their field of vision as a result of like external circumstances. Um, and that rebellious nature, just that undying optimism of, like this is not good enough the way things are going. So let's see what it is we have to overcome as the underdog. And I've got the tea leaf oracle here, and I can only like use half of it at a time. There's a lot of cards in that. Oh, we've got a few. So we've got Unicorn, use your intuition to make beneficial changes. Stork, news of a birth or new business opportunity. And Success. Enough said. No subtext. So some sort of unique opportunity, and that's what we have to overcome as the underdog, or maybe that's the result of what we're overcoming. So let's see. Tell me more. Because this, I wanted to look at it in those aspects of the psyche. So this would be the self position. So tell me more of the self. Just what's at the core of this. King of Coins in reverse. I swear my neighbor outside sounded like he said Elvis. The king. Oh, maybe that's his dog's name. But a business opportunity, maybe? Because we've got this stork card here that mentions a new business. But it's in reverse. I'm not quite sure. That's what's throwing me off. So what about this King of Pentacles? Oh, is this our antagonist? Maybe. I'm just taking the bottom one. Two of Blades, Two of Swords. So a crossroads. A stalemate, even. So you're overcoming a stalemate with your respective antagonist. You can think of that in the like hero's journey structure. And that antagonist doesn't necessarily need to be a person. It could be a circumstance that you're overcoming. Like, I actually just took a little bit of a break. I've been itching to get back to the table, but I needed some time. I was able to catch the aura in time to actually prevent a seizure, which I've never been able to do in the, 2 years since I've got diagnosed with that. It's always been I got the warning in time to, get into position to have a seizure. But I haven't been able to stop it, and it was very draining on the system, but that's a big step, that I didn't even know that I could do that. I thought when I felt the aura that's it. Like, we're locked in for, like, it's seizure time. So, I'm very tired. If my thoughts are a little flighty, don't mind me. But maybe you're overcoming something like that, something that seems insurmountable. Because brain stuff is scary, you know? Figuring out that brain stuff is happening is not a fun process. And it was just like a year and a half ago. Because I have another neurological thing that causes like high brain pressure, essentially. And I was able to improve my health enough to take the surgical options off the table. Like, we haven't talked about the potential for brain surgery or for the thing for my optic nerve in like a year and a half. And that's real progress. And it's hard. We've got the Hierophant. And what is that? 9 of elixirs. 9 of cups. So wish fulfillment and institution. Is an institution preventing your wish fulfillment? Like you're at a stalemate because of that? Like, it's kind of giving me, you know, bad boss is preventing your progress in some way. Or even just the structure of the 9 to 5 is just like stifling, suffocating. At some sort of stalemate with that 2 of swords as to which path is your 9 of cups. But I feel like you know. I feel like deep down, like you already know what that is. So maybe they're trying to convince you otherwise for some reason. Like they're trying to take you away from your authentic nature of, like, you know, the dystopian hamster wheel life just doesn't work for me. You know, maybe you want to be like a freelancer or something, you know, like the stability is not the same as the 9 to 5, but you get the freedom and to work for yourself. And like the 9 to 5s aren't going anywhere. The market is what it is right now. But it's not like the end all be all if you try something and it doesn't work out. Like, you can do other stuff. But for the shadow here, this would be like the personal unconscious. What's causing this conflict? Because I feel like 2 different things on each side of that 2 of swords. That on one side you have your unicorn success, like your breakthrough, you know, the underdog beats the insurmountable odds, and maybe your business takes off, something like that. Are there unconscious fears that are impacting all of this? Whoa. Yeah, I think there are. Something's going on. Not addressing some things. It's usually what I feel like when the cards like barf like that. There's a lot there. I need more specifics though. Is there still something turned over? It was. Actually, I might take this one. Success assured with good plans and hard work. But that's in the shadow. Are you not convinced that hard work will lead to success. Like, have you been burned in the past? I know it's happened to me. Wow. You should accept valid criticism. But that's in the shadow position. And everything that fell down on the floor was face down, so I'm not taking any of those. So you might be over absorbing criticism, like looking too deep into it. Like, consider the narrator when someone provides criticism. Like, is, if you are trying to venture out into like freelance entrepreneurship, something like that, is the criticism that you're receiving from somebody who's attempted this before, not like somebody who, like, I knew a guy who, like, his cousin's son's dog, like, tried it and it didn't work. No, like, is this someone with actual personal experience criticizing you? And I mean, valid criticism, constructive criticism, like, that can help you. That can help improve your business. But if it's somebody that's just like an onlooker, like, okay, maybe my business, whatever respective business it is, you know, maybe I'm not the tarot reader for you, or say it's like a tattoo artist or something. Like, maybe their style just isn't like what you want. Like, no shade, anything, but why would you criticize something that is just not your dive, you know? We've got King of Rods, so King of Wands. 8 of Rods. And Queen of Blades, Queen of Swords. Ooh, in reverse. Huh. And the court cards could be external people that, like, at one point in your life, you were criticized by, like, this archetype, by this, you know, a King of Wands. And now, in present day, you've crossed paths with somebody who is also a King of Wands, and you're, like, those connections are coming up, like, it's getting triggered. And especially with the Queen of Swords in reverse, that's one of my like, malignant narcissist cards. And the Queen, that more feminine, actually, I don't really want to associate that to feminine, but there's more like emotional intelligence, so more covert, subtle digs, passive aggressiveness. But then a message that's coming in quick, maybe unsolicited, is the vibe that I'm getting. Like, the criticism that you got in the past, maybe about something you were trying to create, you know, an egg trying to hatch. Maybe people just stuck their nose in your business and, like, you didn't ask. But for some reason, they feel fine, like, just blurting, getting in there, not staying in their lane. So boundaries, you know, 2 of Swords, put those swords up, like, nope, no more. Let's see what's going on in the ego, like the I self. Your identity, where that lives. Caterpillar. Things will not always be this way. A change is coming. And I don't know if you heard the car out there, so yes, a change is coming. And Archway. New opportunities, possibilities, and paths opening up. Yeah, it just seems like new. You're ready for the butterfly phase. maybe some frustration in the ego, especially if you're dealing with people that are offering unsolicited opinions. And that, I don't know, that's one of those boundaries I can get pretty sharp on. That, like, did I ask? Like, when did you hear me ask? I don't know. You know, like, IRL, us face to face, that is not like a comment section on the internet. It's not just like a free for all. There's actual like social mores that need to be observed. They should be observed on the internet too, but that's a lawless wasteland. So tell me more about this caterpillar. New things coming, new paths. So that your identity, how do I put this? So I used to attach my identity to work. Those were really entangled with one another. And it took a long time for me to kind of peel myself off that like sticky tape and see my self-worth as something separate from something that I could produce. Because that was like the environment that I was raised in, that like you must produce, you must achieve, you know. And it was very freeing to not have my identity attached to work anymore, not only for the stress reduction, but it opened up the space for me to explore my authentic identity without having that like barrier of work in the way. Because I can kind of see in the past where that would have come from, like attaching your identity to work, because there was a point in time where employees were better taken care of. Like I feel like we romanticize a lot, like looking backwards. But you could stay at a company for 30 years and have one person in the home working, and you could have a house and a family and whatnot. And now, not only can you not do that anymore, but employers are expecting even more than what they provided back then, or even more than what they wanted compared to what they're providing. And I don't know, it's just like a endless Ouroboros. The Lovers. Maybe you've been out of the game for a little bit. In order to meet people, you gotta talk to people. I know I cannot stand those apps, and I'm looking for a partner that's fully cooked. And so it's just like, you know, I'll cross paths with who I cross paths with as my life unfolds as I live it, you know. Very Piscean. But maybe you're changing what you're looking for in a partnership. Again, detaching these like preconceived societal norms of what's expected in a relationship, and actually seeking what you want. You know, if it's the house and kids and marriage and traditional, that's great. And maybe you want something that's more, I don't know, modern. Like, I'm not entirely sure if I'll ever be able to cohabitate with someone again. And I really need someone that would be very independent, they have their own life, they have their own thing going on, and when we have our time, it's our time, but we have our own lives just because I have a spicy nervous system. I need I need my time and space. We've got 10 of blades, 10 of swords, my favorite. The and that was not sarcasm, actually. um, if you're new, the reason that the 10 of swords is my favorite is because the only way from rock bottom is up, and now I have all the swords. I have all the lessons. All the things that were supposed to keep me down are now tools in my tool belt to keep me going towards these new paths. So maybe you've been through that too. That's really typical, I think, for the underdog, just getting absolutely clobbered as you go through life to just like a ridiculous degree. Like I remember once asking my therapist that, like, I know it's mathematically possible for me to pick the short straw every single time, but like how? How is this happening? It's those existential questions. Tell me more about this lovers and the 10 of swords. It's kind of giving, goodness gracious, Romeo and Juliet is what I was going to say. That's too many. But we've got what is that? The Page of Rods, the Empress, 6 of Cups, 7 of Cups in reverse. Too many, though. I don't quite know how I feel about that. Let's give her a shuffle. Just one, please. Nope. But since this is in the ego position, maybe there is some attachments maybe to failed relationships. Like, you've really kind of identified with the lone wolf. When what you want is connection, companionship. And so working through just the events of the past, at your pace. I can totally relate to the avoidance stuff. So just take your time revisiting memories, especially painful ones. We've got 6 of coins in reverse. So unequal give and take. And I was yammering about independence, so maybe you've been dealing with codependent partners in the past, or codependence in yourself. And I had to build my relationship to that word because it was so confusing to me, dealing with things like hyper-independence and avoidance, like staying away from even the possibility of relationships for a long time just because of my history. And I didn't realize how many behaviors in myself were like codependent, and some of them also fall into the fawning category. So just getting comfortable with what your stuff is, like whatever it is when it comes to relationships and how that's impacted your identity. And even if you might be exploring a different aspect of your sexual identity, coming out later in life happens to a lot of people. And there might be, maybe there are unsolicited opinions about that you're dealing with. And that's where that strong reaction to that comes from in me, is just like, how dare you weigh in on this when I did not ask. But let's look at the collective unconscious. Just see what in the macro sphere might be affecting our underdogs here. Because I know there's a lot of collective things going on. Goldfish. Increase in material wealth or spiritual growth. The thing that just came to mind was like the AI data centers. You know, they're eating up all the water and stuff like that. So maybe you're dealing with some conflicts of like where you fit in the ecosystem, like in the economy, because there is no ethical capitalism. There just isn't. You know, I think about where some of the materials for my job come from and the people that impacts and whatnot. And how even though I'm not choosing where these come from, it's still like I cannot help but think of like how it arrived to me and what my tax dollars end up contributing. And it can get really existential, like it can get really big and whatnot, but you might be confronting that of where do I fit in this ecosystem. Let's see. Tell me more about the goldfish. And I've also noticed too, later in life there tends to be a lot of spiritual growth. I don't know if that has to do with like the individuation coming around middle age and whatnot, but and also a lot of people have a tendency to work through you know, addiction and major issues, and that will lead you down the spiritual path in a lot of instances. And we've got 3 of blades, 3 of swords, and the chariot, and both were in reverse. So the 3 of swords in reverse, that's like the relief of heartbreak, you know, pulling the swords out so the wounds can heal, you know, because like having the sword in there, it might stifle the bleeding, but the wound is still technically open. And so that might be happening. I think we are seeing that actually happen on a collective scale, and it's kind of brought us to a screeching halt in having to confront like how bad things really are. And I'm being drawn to the dice roll that I did, Pisces, Saturn, and the 10th house. And it's interesting, like I was having a hard time getting a complete grip on a couple of the dice, and the house dice actually landed on 9, but when I went to put it down, it flipped over to 10. So that upcoming transit with Saturn leaving Pisces and going into Aries, you know, coming out of that retrograde. I think it's been out of retrograde for a little bit now, actually. But something about processing those major lessons. Because Saturn, that's the karma planet. But I know I feel just like stopped in my tracks, like horrified at the things that are going on. And maybe that's bringing out the underdog in some people. You know, they want to stand up and protest and do things that foster change. And this can all be affecting what kind of business you want to work at, what kind of partner you want to have. Like, it's a really big, like, identity thing, not only on the micro scale, but on the macro scale, and finding the just the little guy, within ourselves that can overcome these huge problems and stare them down. Because even if you are not participating in anything to, like activism, things like that, you still, to some degree, are having to face just the reality of things right now. And those can be some pretty insurmountable odds in terms of stress and just trying to get by. Like, the last readings that I did, I was talking about just a rough time I was having with everything going on. It's so triggering, the things that are happening. But if we don't look at them for the way they are, how are we going to fix them? We've got the Knight of Blades and the Nine of Blades. Whoa, nightmares. Fighting a nightmarish battle. Yeah. And, back to those AI data centers, like, just seeing them, the speed with which they're going up. And I'm sure not doing any sort of, like, environmental impact studies, because then we'd have written documentation of how bad these things are. And just the impacts it has on people's cognition, the effect on critical thinking, and the menial tasks. I'm seeing people just give it over to AI, and I'm like, how did that happen so fast? It's, I don't know, like Ivy or something taking over a building at an incredibly rapid rate. So this goldfish here, this collective unconscious position, maybe you are taking up some sort of activism. You're finding the purpose. Maybe this conflict here, the unsolicited opinions and the Hierophant that is getting in the way of your new opportunity. Maybe you want to go nonprofit. Maybe you want to do something else. Maybe in your field, but just in a different way. And then people try and stop you, like, but the money and the, like, yes, that's a concern, but it was a concern where I'm at all the time. Like, that concern never goes away. No matter how many times I bring it up, no matter how hard I work, no matter what degree I get, no matter what boxes I check off, I'm always trying to make ends meet. It's a systemic issue. Like, why? I can't ignore it, but why stress myself out about it, Well, let's look at the persona here. So what perception are we projecting out as we go through this? And I did, I don't know if you've noticed up on the top left, but I'm starting to water scry a little bit, and I got a few symbols. The Nightmare Before Christmas, that, like, curly tree. I don't know if it was a tree or like a hill, whatever, that's on the cover. Paris, and a yin yang symbol. So if those are important to you, significant in some way. We've got Rose. Romance is in the air. Speaking of Paris, maybe you're going to Paris. Some sort of fancy vacation or something. you know, with your, maybe somebody new. Maybe you're meeting somebody new, getting back out there, you know. Make sure you know somebody very well before taking an international trip with them. It just like, what was that movie? Taken just came to mind. But this could also be the self love because the underdog, like, what motivates the underdog to keep going against insurmountable odds? Just the David and Goliath difference in power. A lot of times it's love. It can be love for your community. It can be the love of self, that you know that you deserve better than what you've been thrust into. And it could be on a larger, like that macro scale, you know, environmental activism, things like that. Love for the planet. Because this is the one we have. The Hermit. The introspective, the scholar. So very, very independent, like doing your own thing. Because a persona that's like the outermost layer of the psyche that we present to the outside world. And I've heard too, that's like your rising sign is kind of where that fits. And then your sun sign would be the self. Oh. We've got the Wheel of Fortune in reverse. Oh, that's a cool wheel card, though. All the hands. It's like reaching out. So, not reaching out. Very internal work. Seven of Rods. Seven of Wands. And this is normally my surrender card. Like, not necessarily be passive, but like recognize the circumstances and so forth. But this is like refusing to accept things, which in some circumstances I actually don't see an issue with, you know, because talking about like the types of things that an underdog would go up against, it's because they find them unacceptable. It's because these are things that are untenable, they cannot continue. The love for whatever is being threatened, that will overcome this, like, that's just the way things are, like, things suck, like, things are hard, like, well, why? Like, why aren't we doing anything? If they're so bad and it's hurting people, let's do something about it. Like, why are we just letting this ride? Which I understand, you know, Wheel of Fortune in reverse. It's because people are just strapped right now. They're so stressed and bandwidth is eaten up just by trying to get by. You know, I was talking about the constantly chasing the ends meeting no matter how hard I work. Like, am I just supposed to endlessly try and run faster on the hamster wheel? And the only advice I seem to get is like, try a different hamster wheel. They're all hamster wheels. Like, it's not changing anything. They might be a different color, they might be a different shape, they might be a different material, but at the end of the day, it's still a hamster wheel. So, through all my rambling, it kind of seems a bit existential here. Like, there are a lot of identity things going on, confronting really what you want out of life, and the everyday underdog aspect of that, because we often think of that in terms of like superheroes and so forth. You could just be going against the grain. That could be the underdog aspect of it, that you have truly come to the conclusion that the 9 to 5 grind doesn't work for you. The cookie cutter life that everybody says is supposed to make you happy doesn't work for you. I don't know if you can hear the chickadees outside, but they're going crazy. It's about time for their breakfast for them to come to the feeder. But standing out like a unicorn in that way, in pointing out the flaws of the system, you have to be that underdog, because your acceptance, not just acceptance, but unwillingness to veil that, to shadow that away from people, that means they are now confronting the flaws in the system, and they might not be ready for that. People come to that conclusion, if they ever do, on their own. Like, you can't make them be ready to be like, oh, like every layer of the system that's supposed to sustain me is exploitative. That's a really difficult reckoning. So having some compassion, not excusing, enabling bad behavior towards you, unsolicited opinions and sticking their nose where it doesn't belong, things like that. But have some compassion for when the image gets shattered, how much that hurts. That everything you thought was reliable, everything you thought was dependable, it's not what it presented itself to be. And facing that reality, that's pretty harsh on everybody involved, yourself included. The underdog is who comes out on top, in the end. But the Sisyphean journey to get there is very painful. So where is our underdog headed at the end of all this? Or the next stage, Because those heroes' journeys, they go and they go and they go. Like that, what was it? The Energizer Bunny? Hand, in need of help, assistance, and guidance. So maybe you're at the mentor stage of a hero's journey, if you want to look at that structure. And I've got a couple of previous videos. I'll link a playlist at the end of this one. So the mentor, what is it you need help with next? Now I'm curious. Help, assistance, and guidance. Because maybe you're new at this whole, if you're freelancing or entrepreneurship or something, maybe you could use some advice from somebody who has done it, not who just has opinions about what you're doing. Bridge. Successfully overcoming a problem, yeah. So maybe you've hit a snag somewhere. And a snag is not the end of the road. It doesn't have to be the end-all be-all. There's all sorts of statistics about how long it takes to get a business off the ground and maybe you're trying to do that, as like a side hustle to build up some savings or something. Maybe you need a break to absorb all of these realizations that come with the later in life revelations. And that costs money. Just taking the bottom one. But it costs money. Like I hear people saying like, give yourself time and take a break and whatnot. And some of them, they will like toss in at least give yourself an hour or a day or whatnot. Our nervous systems are so fried. That is not enough time. And if you want to take more time, money is just like this constant loop. Ghost in the Shell. The original anime I'm real partial to. Again, very meta, big thinking. So confronting a lot of identity stuff. Maybe I might have to watch that now, because I'm thinking of the end conversation when the major is talking to the puppet master, that exchange. So maybe there's something significant in that for you, but give yourself some time. If you need a break, take the break you can get, at least. It can be extremely frustrating to know how much more you need and not being able to access that. But don't not give yourself a break just because you can't get the full extent of what you need. So take care of yourself. I hope this helps. I hope this resonates. And if it doesn't, I hope the next one does. Thank you so much.